I'm glad to see that you came back after our virus and parasite discussion. Things are going to get a little bit grosser for a little bit longer, so just, I guess, brace yourselves. Today we're going to be talking about foodborne illness bacteria. So we're going to be talking about, we already talked about viruses and parasites. Bacteria is the third thing that we need to talk about. So bacteria. I know that you've heard the word before, but I just want to make sure that you know what they are. Bacteria, 100% for sure, are alive. Just like parasites are, viruses are not. So what bacteria are microscopic living organisms that absorb nutrients from the areas around them and then secrete chemicals back into them. So they're not like a parasite where they like latch onto you or that kind of thing. What they do is they just kind of exist and then they absorb nutrients and then they put other chemicals back into the environment around them. Bacteria, I think when you think about them, get a bad rap. You think to yourself, ugh, bacteria are bad. However, your body needs bacteria for it to run its processes. The most important bacteria that you have in your body are probably in your digestive tract, and they help break down all of the food that you eat along with the enzymes that are produced in your body. And when you go to the bathroom, almost half of the poop that you pass is dead bacteria from the bacteria that have helped you digest your food. So they're really, really important, and they're very critical for your health processes. So to say that you want to kill all bacteria would be really bad because your body functions wouldn't work the way that they're supposed to. However, there are some bad actors in there that we'll talk about. Like I said, not all are harmful. Some of them can actually move on their own, and those are called motile bacteria. They have these little flagella on them and they move around. And some of them need oxygen and some of them don't. And so depending on the type of bacteria, they'll need specific conditions to actually work. We are going to be taking notes again like we did the last time. So this table that I had is probably going to be useful. So if you need to pause the video and get the table going, we're going to break the bacteria up into 2 presentations so that it doesn't go too long. And then you can just keep that table going for the whole time. So again, pathogen is going to be the thing that got you sick, how many people got sick, what usually gets you sick, how long it takes you after you're infected, symptoms, and how long you are sick for. Now, bacteria tend to be the large primary cause of death for people with foodborne illnesses, so I think it makes sense for us to spend a little bit more time talking about the specific types that can get you sick. Understand that we are only going to talk about the top 4. There are probably, I would say 8 to 10 that are really big that can cause them, but because I don't want to bore you to death, we're going to only talk about 4 of them, 2 today and then 2 in the next video. The first that we're going to end up talking about is Salmonella. Now, you probably have heard of this before if someone has warned you not to eat raw cookie dough, but like honestly, who doesn't eat raw cookie dough? They're warning you to do that because of your potential to get salmonella poisoning. You will see in food recalls and things like that, that oftentimes things are contaminated with salmonella, and it is one of the more frequent things that we see in terms of foodborne illness. So in salmonella poisoning, over 1 million people a year get sick from it and as a result of consuming salmonella. Now, most people's bodies can kind of fight off a salmonella infection if you just get a few of the bacteria in your body. But if you get a lot of salmonella in your body, or you get or you have a compromised immune system, then you could potentially run into some problems. So, like I said, over 1 million people every year become sick from it. The main places that you get sick from salmonella are bird-based. So undercooked and raw eggs, and that includes the yolk from a runny egg. If you eat a runny egg yolk, there is the potential for you to get salmonella poisoning. It is up to you to weigh out the, I guess, checks and balances. Like for me, I'm going to eat a runny egg. But for you, you might not want to do that, and you might think it's gross, but I think they're delicious. I will eat raw cookie dough too. So that's kind of a judgment call that you have to make. And not everything that you eat is contaminated with that bacteria. And like I said, if you have a healthy immune system, you are probably going to be in a good shape if you don't eat a lot of the bacteria. The bigger issue is if you are elderly, if you are very young and don't have a strong immune system, if you are on some sort of treatment or you have a health condition that inhibits your immune system, if you're pregnant, all of those conditions with all foodborne illnesses are where you see a lot of the problems. So if someone who is getting chemotherapy for cancer treatment gets infected, they could potentially have more issues than a person who's young and healthy. Okay. In addition to raw eggs, you can get it from undercooked poultry. So if you don't cook chicken all the way to the recommended temperature, you can get sick. You can get away with it with ground beef, but not with ground chicken or raw chicken and turkey and things like that. You can also get it from fresh fruits and vegetables if they have been contaminated with salmonella, and if you've consumed any unpasteurized dairy products. So pasteurization, what it does is it heats the milk up to the correct temperature for 15 seconds to kill all the bacteria. And if you have unpasteurized dairy products, that can potentially get you sick. After you consume salmonella, it gets you sick usually between 12 hours and 72 hours after eating. So it can take up to 3 days for that to happen. Symptoms of salmonella are going to be abdominal pain and cramps, diarrhea, and fever. If you notice in this one, there's not really a lot of vomiting that goes along with salmonella. So most of the time, you're just going to be spent on the toilet, just getting super sick to your stomach and having diarrhea. And salmonella lasts 4 to 7 days. So it is up to a week of being sick. And that can be really bad. Usually by the time you get to 3 to 4 days of being sick, you should be going to the doctor because you should not have diarrhea for that long. So if you find yourself in that position, make sure that you go to the doctor. Antibiotics are what you're going to need to treat these kinds of infections most of the time. So you're going to still have symptoms as long as your body is fighting off that infection. Antibiotics should work with these, and you will have great relief in your symptoms once they get going. The last one we're going to talk about in this presentation is something called Escherichia coli, which sounds kind of like I can't pronounce it. And so this Escherichia, that's hard to say. They just cut it off and they call it E. coli, which you probably have heard of. E. coli is the thing around Manitowoc that could potentially close a beach. If it's found on the beach when they do the water testing, you'll find E. coli there. E. coli comes from, a lot of times in water, runoff from waste. So either human waste in the water or manure or something along those lines that gets flushed into the water system. And every year around 75,000 people get sick from it, specifically E. coli O157H7, and that's the most dangerous strain of coli. There are a bunch of other strains of E. coli that do get people sick, but the one that's of most concern for us is this E. coli O157H7. So we're going to be talking about that one mostly. But if you've ever gone on vacation and gotten, like, they call it traveler's diarrhea, it's probably caused by E. coli or one of the other ones that we're going to be talking about. So the E. coli O157H7, or sometimes they call it a Shiga toxin producing E. coli, that gets infected, or you get infected by eating raw and undercooked beef, which is usually a hamburger. So if you go to a restaurant, sometimes they'll ask you how you want your hamburger cooked. Hamburgers should not be pink in the middle if you want to avoid E. coli infection. Okay. When we get into, say, food handling, we're going to talk about why that is, but it has to do with the way that the meat's processed and how the bacteria can kind of live inside of it. So if you are eating a raw hamburger, you are at risk for getting E. coli. Unpasteurized milk, again, because cows are huge carriers of E. coli. If you don't have pasteurized milk, the poop from the cow can get contaminated and wreck your dairy. Or raw veggies and sprouts. A lot of times when they sprout, like Jimmy John's has this a lot, where you grow sprouts, they can be contaminated with E. coli as well, and that can be really bad for you. You can get sick 3 to 4 days usually after eating the contaminated food. This is, again, with the one specific strain of E. coli. This strain of E. coli comes with bloody diarrhea. So it's making the insides of your intestines bleed. Stomach cramps are another big one of those. And then the big problem with this particular strain of E. coli, the O157H7, is that depending on your immune system and how it responds to it, once in a while, this can actually lead to kidney failure and then death. So once in a while, you will see somebody die from an E. coli infection, and usually it's because the toxins produced by this particular strain of E. coli actually make your kidneys shut down, and then you die from it. There was a very large outbreak in the 90s that took place at a restaurant called Jack in the Box, where a bunch of people out west got sick from it, and several people actually died from the infection, so it can be bad. Even if you just get the E. coli infection, most people are still sick 5 to 7 days. So you are sick a really long time with this infection, and it can be really uncomfortable. All right, so those are our first 2 bacteria. In our next presentation, we're going to be talking about the last 2, and then hopefully we should be good and you should be ready to answer some questions about this. If you have any questions, let us know and we'll be able to answer them. Thanks.